A good question. For me, it was a very personal experience knowing him. But subsequently, I've discovered, for example, that he was directly instrumental in uh, having the human being happen in the summer of love and all this. And his life is, I think, a contemporary version of the medieval morality plays. He lived an extraordinary existence, almost unbelievable, actually. And some of the stories about his life will be in the book. And people deserve to know it. There's a small circle of people who are aware of his life, but nobody knows the full story. We each have, pieces of the elephant, the proverbial elephant. And this is an opportunity to get the story of one man uh, who had an extremely central influence on one of the major events of the last half century or more, the 60s in America and the Haight-Ashbury, and which changed the world. It was, I think, in 63. It could have been 62. I was living in San Francisco, and I would hang out at this wonderful, notorious bar in North Beach called the Anxious Asp. Uh, Also hanging out at the bar were Janis Joplin and her lady friends, the Wild Girls. And the story had it that Janis escaped Port Arthur, Texas, with my friend Peter, who was my introduction to John Cooke. And Peter and I had met there. He was moving down to Big Sur slash Carmel Highlands to live with John in his fantastic house perched on the Pacific Ocean. And I was invited down. I went, and the rest is history. I met John and his group of followers, really, and they were in the process of putting together the new tarot for the Aquarian Age, which is an amazing um, piece of work and is probably going to be central to this biography that we're trying to put together. Almost incalculable, because I was on my way to Europe, my first trip to Europe in early 64. And actually, Peter and I were going to hook up in Copenhagen. I was going to Sweden on a Swedish freighter from New York. Uh, we didn't manage to do that, but Peter wound up going off to India, and that's another tale. But John had provided me with introductions to Brian Geisen, who was a major figure in the beat movement of the day, and Bill Burroughs, who I wound up meeting a few years later, the author of Naked Lunch, of course. So that opened doors and changed my whole attitude and perspective on life. It was another world that I hadn't experienced up to that point. Well, after that first trip to Europe, I was there and in North Africa and Morocco and in Egypt and all across North Africa. It was quite a year and a half voyage of discovery, as they say. And I returned to San Francisco. John had left Carmel Highlands and moved to Mexico, to Tepoztlan. And Rosalind, who was living with John in Carmel, wound up moving north. John came up for a visit to Kentfield. Alice Kent, his sister, was married to Roger Kent of Kentfield, settlers of Kentfield, California, in Marin County. He was chairman of the Democratic Party at the time. And Rosalind was there, and we wound up moving to San Francisco together to the Haight-Ashbury and literally presided over the flower power, the budding and falling leaves of Flower Power in 66 and 67. The summer of 66, I went down to visit John in Tepoztlan. I stayed for the summer, and while I was there, Leonard Cohen came to visit. And Leonard was more or less unknown at the time, but he was building up his reputation. And John held up a little party for the neighborhood kids of Tepoztlan, at which Leonard Cohen played Suzanne Takes You Down. That's pretty good, huh?